In the shadowed nights of medieval Europe, fear took a shape both unseen and undeniable. It was a fear that did not fade with the dawn but lingered in the whisper of the wind, in the silence that fell upon villages after the last light was extinguished. In a world without science to explain death or the mysteries that followed it, people clung to one terrible certainty: some dead did not remain dead. The vampire was more than a tale told by fireside. It was a reality shaped by centuries of fear and experience, woven into the very fabric of life across many lands. This fear was not born from fantasy alone but grew from the collective memory of communities haunted by what they saw and what they could not explain. Blood was not simply a sign of life, it was the bond between the living and the dead, the thread that tied souls across the boundary of mortality. Throughout Europe, from the dense forests of the Carpathians to the misty shores of the British Isles, stories spread of figures who walked the night, eyes glowing with unnatural hunger, moving silently through the darkness. In these stories, the dead were not silent. They called out, seeking what was stolen from them: warmth, breath, life. The living lived in constant dread, wary of the shadow at their window, the cold touch on their skin, the unexplained deaths that seemed to follow the burying of the recently passed. Such fears were not isolated or confined to one place. The belief in the restless dead appeared in many forms across cultures, each adding its own name, its own rituals, and its own methods of defense. The Church condemned these entities as abominations, while folk healers and wise women crafted charms and incantations to keep them at bay. It was common for villagers to take extreme measures to prevent the dead from rising. Bodies were burned, hearts pierced with stakes, mouths stuffed with stones or garlic. These were desperate acts against an enemy that could not be fought by ordinary means. The vampire was not just a creature of myth but a shadow that stretched across centuries, a presence so persistent it was recorded in legal documents, chronicled in court cases, and whispered in the dark corners of remote villages. This story is not merely a retelling of legends but a journey through the historical echoes of a fear that refused to die. It follows the traces left behind in dusty archives, in forgotten graves, and in the lingering superstitions that still haunt some corners of the world. From the earliest days of the belief in the undead to the well-documented cases of the 19th century, this tale unfolds as a tapestry of horror, humanity, and the unknown. It reveals the line between life and death, blurred by the shadows of those who walked in both worlds. To understand the vampire is to peer into the abyss where history and horror intertwine, where the past continues to breathe beneath the surface of our modern understanding. Nestled deep within the rugged Carpathian Mountains, where mist clings to ancient trees and shadows stretch long before dusk, there once lay a village shrouded in a peculiar dread. The villagers spoke little of it, yet their customs revealed a profound terror of death's finality, or rather, of its unsettling absence. Unlike neighboring settlements, this village did not commit its dead to the earth in peace. Instead, they chose fire over soil, burning bodies to ashes in great pyres, fearing what might come if the earth swallowed their dead whole. This fear was born from a series of inexplicable occurrences that had begun decades earlier. The villagers whispered of bodies found torn from their graves, of unexplainable disappearances under the cloak of night, and most chillingly, of eyes that gleamed with unnatural light in the darkness. The most harrowing tale involved a small child, barely 7 years old, who vanished on a fog-heavy evening. Her mother swore she saw the father, recently buried, rising from his grave, pale and silent, beckoning her into the night. These events were no mere superstition. The villager's own priest, a man of faith and reason, chronicled his unease in a weathered journal. He wrote of waking one night to find the corpse of a local farmer sitting upright in his coffin, his glassy eyes fixed on the window as if searching for something lost. Despite his attempts to calm the villagers, the priest could not dispel the palpable terror that gripped them. The village's unorthodox funerary practices grew more severe with each passing year. Bodies were no longer buried but consumed by flames, the ashes scattered on the winds that swept through the mountain passes. This drastic measure was not just ritual but a desperate attempt to sever the bond between the dead and the living, to prevent the restless from returning. Travelers who passed near the village reported a haunting sight: columns of smoke rising nightly against the dark sky, the flickering light of pyres casting eerie shadows across the surrounding forest. Few dared linger, and fewer still spoke of what they saw, lest the darkness reach beyond the mountains. Despite these efforts, the village was haunted not only by tales but by loss. Families grieved not just for the dead, but for those who disappeared without trace, consumed by a terror none could explain. The belief was unanimous: the dead did not rest, and their hunger was eternal. This isolated community's struggle with the undead was a chilling testament to the fears that gripped medieval Europe. It was a world where death was not a passage to peace but a threshold to something far more sinister, an endless hunger that transcended the grave. In the 15th century, amid the shifting borders and turbulent politics of the Kingdom of Hungary, fear of the undead found its way into the courts of law. Unlike the superstitions whispered only in isolated villages, here, accusations against the dead became matters of official record. One such case would leave a permanent mark on history: the trial of a man named János, whose death was anything but peaceful. János was an ordinary farmer by all accounts, respected by his neighbors and devoted to his family. Yet soon after his passing, a strange affliction swept through his household. Relatives grew weak, their vitality drained by a mysterious force. Rumors spread that János had risen from his grave, visiting his loved ones under the cover of night. Panic gripped the community, and the local magistrate was compelled to act. A formal order was issued to exhume János's body for examination, a procedure both gruesome and rare. When the grave was opened, witnesses reported a sight that chilled even the most hardened men. The corpse was unerringly fresh, the flesh supple, the skin tinged with a reddish hue, and blood found seeping from the mouth. This contradicted all known signs of decay and suggested an unnatural preservation. The court convened, and testimonies were taken from those who claimed encounters with the restless dead. The final verdict was grim. János was declared a vampire, a creature defiling the boundary between life and death. The sentence was clear: a stake must be driven through his heart, his body burned to ashes, and the remains scattered far from the village. This trial was not an isolated incident. Across the region, similar legal proceedings took place, reflecting a societal need to confront the terror of the undead with tangible, decisive action. These trials reveal a profound tension between religious doctrine and folk belief, where law and superstition intertwined in the quest for safety. The documents from the period provide harrowing details of exhumations and post-mortem punishments, painting a vivid picture of a community struggling to maintain order in a world where death did not always mean rest. They also show the limits of contemporary knowledge and the power of fear to shape justice. The trial of János serves as a stark reminder that in medieval Europe, the line between myth and reality was fragile, and the consequences of crossing it were deadly. It embodies a time when death's finality was questioned, and when the living took extraordinary measures to protect themselves from those who refused to stay in the grave. In a quiet town nestled within the rolling hills of northern Italy during the late 15th century, a woman named Lucia lived a life shadowed by suspicion and fear. Unlike the typical accusations that often surfaced in whispered tales of the undead, Lucia's case was marked by an eerie anomaly. She did not cast a reflection in any mirror. This unsettling fact alone was enough to estrange her from the community, but it was the strange illnesses that followed her presence which truly turned neighbors into enemies. Lucia's neighbors began to fall ill under mysterious circumstances. Young women who worked alongside her grew pale and weak, their vitality fading as if drained by an unseen force. Some succumbed entirely, their bodies wasted away without a clear cause. Whispers spread that Lucia was a harbinger of death, a being not bound by the laws of nature. At night, townsfolk reported glimpses of a shadowy figure lingering beneath windows or slipping through darkened alleys. The air seemed to grow colder when she passed, and an inexplicable sense of dread filled the hearts of those who encountered her. When Lucia finally died, the town watched with wary eyes. Her body was placed in a coffin, but unlike the usual swift cooling of the deceased, her corpse remained unnervingly warm for 3 full days. Her eyes stayed open, wide and watchful, as if still seeking something beyond the grave. On the 3rd night, the unimaginable occurred. Lucia vanished from her coffin without a trace. The only evidence of her disappearance was a faint scent of blood mingled with lilac, lingering in the cold air of the tomb. The townspeople were left with more questions than answers, and the legend of the woman without a reflection spread far beyond their borders. It became a cautionary tale whispered across Italy and beyond, a story that blurred the line between the living and the dead, the natural and the supernatural. This story was not merely a local superstition but a reflection of deeper fears, a manifestation of how communities grappled with the inexplicable, seeking explanations in the shadows when reason failed. It stood as a chilling testament to the belief that some beings, bound neither by life nor death, walked unseen among the living. Deep within the Austrian countryside, where thick forests stretch endlessly and the morning mist clings stubbornly to the earth, stands a centuries-old chapel. To the casual observer, it is a place of quiet reverence, a sanctuary of peace amid the rolling hills. Yet, beneath its sacred stones lies a secret that has haunted the faithful and the curious alike for generations, a secret whispered only in the darkest hours of night. In the early 1600s, as the tides of religious turmoil swept across Europe, the chapel underwent a series of renovations. It was during these works that laborers uncovered a sealed chamber hidden beneath the stone floor, a crypt that had long been forgotten by time. The air inside was thick with decay, and an unnatural chill settled upon all who entered. Within the chamber lay a grim tableau, skeletons arranged in unnatural positions, their ribs shattered as if by violent force. Their chests bore deep gashes, as though their hearts had been torn free. Streaks of dried blood stained the ancient walls, forming grotesque patterns that seemed to pulse in the flickering torchlight. The workers recoiled in horror, abandoning their tasks and hastening to inform the local clergy. The priest who arrived to investigate documented the scene meticulously. In his ledger, he described the chamber as a sanctuary for those who defied death, a place where the boundary between the mortal world and the hereafter had been shattered. The crypt, he wrote, was no ordinary burial site but a prison for souls condemned to wander eternally. The discovery sent ripples through the nearby villages, reigniting fears that had long been buried beneath layers of faith and silence. Tales circulated of a presence that lingered within the chapel's walls, an unseen force that watched from the shadows, waiting for the veil between worlds to thin once more. Local folklore spoke of a figure known only as the Bleeding One, a revenant said to have been trapped within the chapel by ancient rites. According to legend, this being was neither fully alive nor truly dead, cursed to feed on the life force of the living to sustain its unnatural existence. The scars on the skeletons were believed to be marks of the desperate attempts to contain its hunger. The chapel itself became a place avoided by many, a locus of dread where even the bravest dared not linger after dusk. Some claimed that the sound of dripping blood echoed through the halls, while others spoke of ghostly apparitions seen in the flicker of candlelight. Despite efforts by the church to consecrate the site anew and perform exorcisms, the unease persisted. The crypt remained sealed, a silent testament to the darkness it held within. Scholars who later examined the site noted the unique arrangement of the bones and the symbols etched into the stones, marks not common in Christian burial traditions but reminiscent of pagan rites meant to bind or banish restless spirits. This discovery revealed a convergence of beliefs, where ancient superstitions intertwined with the dogma of the Church, reflecting the complex relationship between faith and fear in a world grappling with the unknown. The story of the Bleeding Chapel stands as a haunting reminder that beneath the veneer of sanctity, ancient terrors lingered, terrifying remnants of a past where the line between salvation and damnation was perilously thin. As the centuries passed, the whispers of the restless dead crossed not only the borders of kingdoms but also the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. The legends and fears born in the shadows of Europe took root in the New World, where settlers carried with them ancient beliefs intertwined with the hope and dread of the unknown. In the early 19th century, in a small town in rural New England, the Brown family found themselves at the center of a chilling event that would forever link the old world's fears to the new. Tuberculosis, known then as consumption, was ravaging communities, leaving families broken and desperate. The Browns were no exception. Mercy Brown, the youngest daughter of the family, succumbed to the disease, leaving behind grieving parents and siblings. Yet, soon after her burial, strange occurrences began to unsettle the town. Family members who had been ill began to worsen, despite no apparent cause. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones of Mercy's body remaining unnaturally preserved, her cheeks flushed with color, and fresh blood found in her mouth upon exhumation. The local community, steeped in both superstition and the harsh realities of illness, sought to end what they believed to be a curse. Under the guidance of the town's doctor and clergyman, Mercy's heart was removed and burned, the ashes scattered to the winds. Following this ritual, the health of the surviving family members improved markedly, and the outbreaks ceased. Newspapers of the era documented these events, capturing a moment when the old world's fears met the new world's uncertainties. The case of Mercy Brown became emblematic of the struggle to understand disease through the lens of superstition and emerging science. This episode was not an isolated incident but part of a broader pattern across America and Europe, where communities confronted inexplicable illnesses by turning to age-old practices designed to keep the dead at rest. These rituals, often involving exhumation and destruction of the body, were desperate attempts to halt the spread of death itself. The story of the Browns illuminates how the vampire myth adapted and persisted, evolving to meet new contexts while retaining its core fear, that death was not always the end, and that the dead might return to claim the living. As settlers forged new lives across unfamiliar landscapes, the shadows of their ancestors' fears followed, shaping the cultural fabric of the emerging nations. The restless dead, it seemed, were not bound by geography but traveled wherever humans carried their stories and their fears. Across centuries and continents, whispers tell of those who seem untouched by time, figures who neither age nor fade, whose presence is marked not by life but by an endless hunger. These ageless ones lurk at the fringes of history, their stories folded into legends and scattered in forgotten records. In a small village in Portugal, there is a tale of a shadowed man who appeared without warning. Cloaked in darkness, his eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and his touch was said to chill the blood. The villagers spoke in hushed tones of how he offered blessings that sounded like curses, eternal life, but at a terrible cost, a hunger that could never be sated. Families spoke of disappearing members, shadows that moved without bodies, and names that echoed through generations. Often the same, Mercy, Elias, or sometimes no name at all. These figures were said to walk unseen among the living, feeding not just on blood but on hope, warmth, and life itself. Stories passed from mouth to mouth, each adding its own layer of fear and mystery. Some claimed the ageless ones were former humans cursed by sins too great to forgive, others believed them to be ancient beings, neither alive nor dead, condemned to wander until the end of time. Medical records from centuries past contain rare but puzzling references to individuals whose age defied logic. Parish registers would note births and deaths, but sometimes a name appeared year after year without change, as if time had forgotten them. One such figure was said to have lived through multiple wars, bearing witness to empires rising and falling, yet never growing older. Villagers who claimed to have seen him described a man whose eyes held both sorrow and hunger, a prisoner of his own immortality. The ageless ones blur the line between myth and history, challenging our understanding of mortality. Their existence is a silent threat lurking beneath the surface of human experience, a reminder that some fears never die, and some stories refuse to be buried. These tales, though shrouded in mystery, reveal a universal truth: the human fascination and terror of living beyond death. The ageless ones embody the curse of endless life, stripped of peace, driven only by an insatiable need that condemns them to solitude and fear. In the hills of Bulgaria, archaeologists uncovered an ancient burial site that would forever deepen the mystery surrounding the restless dead. Among the unearthed skeletons was one grave that stood apart, a figure buried with a heavy iron object driven deep into the neck. Nearby, an inscription in Latin read, "Non mortis, non vivis," neither dead nor alive. This chilling phrase seemed to confirm what local folklore had long whispered: some who had passed from life were feared not to have truly left it behind. The burial rites applied to this individual were markedly different from others, evidence of an attempt to restrain something that might awaken. The practice of driving metal spikes or stakes through corpses was widespread across Eastern Europe during the medieval period. These measures were born from a deep-rooted fear that certain dead could rise and harm the living. The stake was meant to pin the body to the earth, to sever its power, and to prevent the soul from wandering. This grave in Bulgaria was not unique in its symbolism. Centuries earlier, similar markings had been discovered in Wallachia, the land ruled by Vlad III, better known as Vlad the Impaler, a figure whose legacy is intertwined with the vampire myth. His tombs bore the same marks, connecting the fear of the undead across time and space. The phrase, non mortis, non vivis, captures the essence of the vampire legend, a state suspended between life and death, an existence fueled by the hunger that defies rest. It was believed that these marked individuals were cursed, forever caught in limbo, their bodies unable to decay, their spirits unable to find peace. Such burials were often accompanied by rituals designed to break the curse: decapitation, burning of the heart, and placement of holy symbols. Yet, the persistence of these practices reveals a profound uncertainty about the true nature of death and what lay beyond. The grave's discovery shed light on the lengths to which medieval communities would go to protect themselves from the unknown. It also exposed a broader cultural anxiety, that death might not be the end, and that some among the dead walked the night still, their thirst unquenched. These findings link archaeological evidence to the stories passed down through generations, offering a haunting glimpse into a world where the boundary between life and death was blurred, and the fear of the vampire was as real as the earth beneath their feet. In the remote villages of Romania, among rolling hills steeped in ancient superstition, there exists a mirror unlike any other. This artifact, passed down through generations, carries a dark reputation. It is said to consume reflections, a silent gateway to the world of the unseen. The mirror's origins are lost to time, but local lore tells of a scholar who once sought to uncover its secrets. He was a man of science and curiosity, determined to prove or disprove the legends whispered by the villagers. When he gazed into the glass, the scholar saw only darkness. No image returned, no reflection answered back. Days later, he disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a hastily scrawled note: "They dwell in mirrors. They wait until we invite them in." This cryptic message has haunted the village ever since, a chilling warning passed from elder to child. It is said that the vampire's power is linked not only to blood and death but also to the reflection, or rather, the absence of it. Mirrors, in many cultures, were believed to be portals, capable of trapping souls or revealing hidden truths. To see one's reflection was to affirm existence. To lack it was a mark of otherness, a sign of the cursed. The villagers took great care to cover their mirrors during times of illness or death, fearing that the restless dead might use these silvered surfaces as doorways to the living world. They believed that a vampire could not cross a threshold unless invited, but once invited, could move unseen through reflections, waiting patiently for the moment to strike. Over the centuries, countless stories have emerged of people who noticed their reflections fading or distorting, of shadows moving independently within the glass, and of faces appearing where none should be. The eternal mirror stands as a symbol of the vampire's liminal existence, caught between visibility and invisibility, between life and death, forever watching but never truly seen. It is a reminder that fear often resides not just in what is present, but in what is absent, not in what we can touch, but in what slips just beyond our grasp. Even today, in some remote villages scattered across Europe's ancient landscapes, the old fears linger like a thick fog that refuses to lift. Though modern life has pushed superstition to the edges, traditions of guarding the dead and watching over graves persist, a testament to a deep-rooted anxiety that the restless dead might still walk among the living. In these quiet hamlets, families still keep vigil through the night when a loved one passes. Neighbors gather, holding candles and murmuring prayers, eyes fixed on the freshly covered earth. The belief is simple but profound: to watch is to protect, to prevent the dead from rising with hunger in their hearts. Stories abound of cracked tombstones, broken fences, and graves disturbed without explanation. Some say these signs indicate the dead's desire to break free from their resting place. Others warn of shadows that linger too long, footsteps that echo without a source, and a chill that creeps through the bones. One such tale tells of a family who lost a child during a harsh winter. For weeks afterward, neighbors reported seeing a small figure wandering near the cemetery, pale and silent. The family kept a nightly vigil, burning protective herbs and placing iron crosses around the grave. Only when the child was laid to rest with these rites did the sightings cease. These customs are not merely relics of a superstitious past but expressions of a universal fear, that death is not an end, but a doorway. The living strive to keep that door closed, but sometimes the boundary blurs, and those who should rest find their way back. Anthropologists studying these practices note a striking continuity. From medieval Europe to modern times, humans have sought to control the unknown by ritual and watchfulness. The vampire legend, far from fading, adapts and persists as a symbol of our uneasy relationship with mortality. The fear that those who are always near might cross over without warning shapes not only folklore but the very fabric of communal life in these places. It reminds us that beneath the surface of civilization, primal fears endure. Fears that the dead do not sleep, that the night hides more than darkness, and that some shadows follow us long after life ends. The story of vampires is far more than tales told by candlelight. It is a reflection of humanity's deepest fears: fear of death, fear of the unknown, fear that what lies beyond the grave may not be peace but endless hunger. Throughout centuries and across continents, this fear has shaped cultures, laws, rituals, and legends. From the Carpathian pyres to the trial courts of Hungary, from the vanished woman of Italy to the bleeding chapel in Austria, the vampire has lived in the shadowy spaces where history and myth entwine. Each story, each ritual, each mark left on a grave speaks to a world struggling to understand mortality and the restless dead. As these legends crossed oceans and entered new lands, they evolved but never lost their core truth: that death might not be the end, and that some among the dead refuse to rest. The tale of Mercy Brown in New England is a stark reminder of how old fears meet new realities, blending superstition with emerging science. Even today, in forgotten villages where the old ways endure, the fear remains. The restless dead, the ageless ones, those who are neither dead nor alive, these shadows continue to haunt the edges of our collective consciousness. Vampires are not just creatures of folklore. They are symbols of our battle with mortality itself. They embody the eternal question of what happens when life slips away but refuses to let go. As the night falls and the world grows quiet, it is worth remembering these stories, not as mere entertainment, but as echoes of a past that still pulses beneath the surface. The shadows may never fade, and the hunger may never cease. In the end, perhaps the greatest horror is not the vampire itself, but the fear that some part of us, too, might never truly rest.